Fasten your seatbelts, the week's most impactful, confusing, and befuddling local news stories, all delivered to you in 26 minutes or less. Your week reviewed. Next.
Week in Review is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, Bob and Marlise Gorley, the Courtney S. Turner Charitable Trust, John H. Mize, and Bank of America N.A. co-trustees. The Francis Family Foundation through the discretionary fund of David and Janice Francis. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Nick Haynes. Glad to have you with us on our fast-moving, high-energy journey through the news of our week, pouring through the week's top local headlines. From KCUR News, Lisa Rodriguez. He is 50% of Dana and Parks on KMBZ Radio. Scott Parks. From our Metro's newest newspaper, Next Page KC, Eric Wesson. And tracking the region's top political stories for KCUR News, Brian Ellison. Now, it was a week in which it seemed like Kansas City only cared about one thing, sports, and adding to the newsworthiness, a battle for eyeballs as a rare clash in prime time forced Kansas City fans to pick between watching the Chiefs and the Royals. Did anyone really, though, care about any other news stories in Kansas City this week? It seems every single detail took up our entire newscasts, from the shirt sales to Taylor Swift's painted-on glitter freckles, Lisa.
I mean, certainly this was the biggest story of the week, and no question. But how nice does that feel to have two teams in the playoffs, to have this dominating our headlines? We are constantly bogged down by politics, by elections, by crime, and I know we'll get to all of that today, but it feels nice for this to be the biggest story.
But Scott, you and I are in the same business. We have to fill time to have important things that are happening to talk about. And again, if it wasn't for the hurricane and the Chiefs and the Royals, you know, the Kansas City Star might have been just one page this week.
Or maybe half a page. But I will say this, being in the talk radio business, sometimes you have to talk about not sometimes, all the time. You have to talk about what's on the minds of the people listening to your program.
Absolutely.
And I lost count of how many texts we got during the show this week that said, have you morphed into a sports station? No, of course we haven't. But this is what everybody's talking about, and it's exciting, and it's not violent, and it's not political. And I'm trying to think of a time in the history of these two teams when they have both been in the playoffs at the same time, and I'm struggling to think of a year.
So exciting times, with the Royals basking in more love and attention that I think they have in so long. Was this the opportunity for John Sherman saying, hey, let's move forward right now? It's not going to be a better time, Eric. We need to move forward with a plan for a new Royals ballpark right now.
He can either do that or he can market it someplace else. He's got a golden opportunity right now. Last year they lost 108 games. This year they're in the playoffs. So this is a great time for the Royals and for John Sherman.
Any evidence he's ready to pull the trigger at this moment in time, taking advantage of the fact that the city seems to have just changed to a shade of blue this week?
It's interesting. It seems like he's actually pulled back from pressing forward on the stadium conversations. I saw that he was at the game on Wednesday night, sitting in the front row behind home plate, very much into the game. You haven't heard him talking about the stadium proposals, and it seems like there is perhaps a concerted effort to give that some space, to give it a rest, so that folks can get excited about baseball again. As I've said on this program before, I think that is politically beneficial to him down the road.
Now, several interesting new developments did surface this week about that, though. Plans for building a new Royals ballpark next to Crown Center got a big boost thanks to a front-page story in the Business Journal, which claims Kansas City can gift Washington Square Park to the Royals so the project can move forward without a public vote. According to the report, the Parks Board has the authority to just lease the ground to the Royals for free. While the site near Crown Center was not one of the original proposed locations, the Business Journal says it solves multiple problems, including no need to demolish small businesses or low-income apartments to build the stadium. Where we rank locations, is this now the top of the list, Scott?
The Washington Square Park idea, if I could be blunt, is the dumbest idea that I think I've ever heard.
Now seriously, now be honest with us, Scott.
I don't understand the team or the city's obsession with a downtown baseball park. And I was watching the playoffs this week when they were at Kauffman Stadium, when they lost that game 2-1 when they lost the game to the Yankees in Game 3. And it dawned on me, maybe we're looking at this the wrong way. Maybe we tear down Arrowhead and leave Kauffman Stadium right where it is. It is a beautiful, modern-looking baseball park where Arrowhead looks its age. I think the Royals need to stay out at the Truman Sports Complex. I really do. Or if they have to move downtown, the northeast side, that idea I still think is the best one.
And that is not going to happen. The Royals are not going to stay at Kauffman Stadium. I think that is the only thing that I think is clear from all of these conversations. They're going to go somewhere else. I think the downtown stadium idea, the interesting thing about the Crown Center proposal is that if it does move forward, as is now being predicted without any kind of vote of the people, is there may be initial outcry that has happened after the no vote earlier, but that will pass. And a few years down the road, folks won't be talking about what happened with a vote or no vote. They'll just be assessing the stadium. That's probably the best outcome for the Royals, and it gets them out a lot of the problems that they were going to have with any of the other proposed sites.
Our viewer Joe asks, where would you park and tailgate if it's right there near Crown Center? And how do you expect 20 to 40,000 people to get in and out of there 80 to 100 times a year?
You probably wouldn't. It probably would be a mess. But downtown stadiums are a trend. I was recently in Washington, D.C. They've got a downtown baseball stadium. Parking doesn't seem to be a problem for them either, and then they've got a little entertainment district around it. That seems to be the trend, but I think people here have gotten so spoiled with Arrowhead and Kauffman Stadium being right there that they're not ready to make a change.
I always find it interesting, though, people say that, where are we going to park? How are we going to get that many people out of there? Yet we have the NFL draft right there. We have the Royals or a Chiefs parade, and yet it seems to be mobbed with people who seem to have no problem whatsoever going to exactly that space to congregate en masse.
There is parking available. It's not in a massive lot around the stadium. The one thing that will be lost, though, as your reader points out, is the tailgating culture. You will not be able to park, pop the trunk, get a grill out, and tailgate there. That culture that has been so present for so many decades around both Chiefs and Royals games will be gone.
But from a financial standpoint for the city, what they believe it will be replaced with is going to the restaurants and bars that will be spread out, the ones that already exist and the new ones that will crop up. So it will be a tailgating culture moved indoors into businesses, and that could be better for the city, at least from a financial standpoint.
I was just going to add to Eric's point about the ballpark in Washington, D.C. I've been to it, and it's nice, but it is also surrounded by a great public transportation system. When we went to the game in D.C. to see the Nationals, we took public transportation from our hotel to the ballpark. The train drops you off right outside. And they don't have that in Kansas City.
Well, we will have the extended streetcar line by then.
You better get more.
All righty. Now, it has been a long time, by the way, since Clay County was part of the mix of sites, but they roared back into the headlines as well this week as county leaders say they're not only still in talks with the Royals, they're now working on a plan to locate the Chiefs' practice facility in North Kansas City.
I think that it would be something that would be impactful to the Northland and to Clay County. So I would be very interested in having those discussions.
Interesting. Let's start with the ballpark, Eric, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 means you've got to be kidding and 10 means watch out, Jackson County, the Royals are moving. Where do we place this story?
1.
Okay, all right. You was blood the scores this week. Okay.
You didn't have a 0 in there, but yeah, the 1.
So they're being played again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I am interested, though, in the Chiefs' notion of having a practice facility there. I know the Dallas Cowboys, for instance, they have broken it all up. They play in Arlington, Texas. That's where the Dallas Cowboys Stadium is, Scott. Yet the headquarters and the practice facility is 40 minutes away in the city of Frisco, Texas. So it seems plausible that something like that could happen here, right?
I'll give North Kansas City this. They are amazingly aggressive for a relatively small town. And I can only imagine that every morning when Mayor Lucas picks up the newspaper, he's just like, oh my gosh, that gnat is flying around my head again. I'm with Eric. It's highly unlikely that North Kansas City would get either, but I do applaud their tenacity.
Now, speaking of this week's big sports events, Mayor Quinton Lucas was in New York to see the Royals play at Yankee Stadium Monday night. Just like anything you post on social media, it gets pushed back. Cole wrote on X, Mayor, you should be at home advocating for the prosecution of criminals terrorizing the city, not blowing taxpayers' dollars on a New York City vacation. Who does pay for the mayor to go to games in other cities? Does he pay for it himself?
No, often not.
Okay.
These are lobbyist gifts. They're donor gifts. They're not. The mayor insists they're not taxpayer dollars, but it is his time there, and the way he gets there is also something that could be looked into as lobbyist gifts as well. A private jet is likely not coming out of the mayor's pockets.
Well, some other news this week, the Nelson Atkins Museum is announcing a massive expansion. In fact, one of the largest expansions in recent memory. An international design competition is now underway to dream up a new building that could house 61,000 square feet of new gallery space. Here's the kicker. It's a $170 million project, but it's going to be paid for by private donations. So help me understand this. How can the museum do such a massive renovation and building project without public help? But if you want to renovate or build a new sports stadium, you can't possibly do it without tax assistance. What is the difference?
$2 billion.
Because the size, the scope and size
Well,
of it?
I mean, the Nelson is clearly, without question, one of the greatest gems of our city. I take every visitor there. I've taken my kids there more times than I can count. But when you're talking about $160 million, and the benefactors of the museum have deep pockets, whereas when you're talking about building a $2 billion stadium, and here comes the old meme, you're building a $2 billion stadium for millionaire players, that's where it gets blowback from the public.
You say that that's not taxpayer supported, but those are nonprofit organizations. So all of those charitable contributions made to the foundations that support the museum and to the museum itself, those were tax deductible. Those were tax sheltered donations. So the taxpayers are contributing, and rightly so, I would argue, to an arts organization, but it is not completely separate.
And getting into the art gallery is free.
Yes.
Versus going to a game that is $200, $300, and $400. So that's a big difference.
I'm always amazed also, Lisa. I mean, I was recently at the Nelson. I mean, it could take you weeks to go through everything. It is absolutely humongous. Why do they need to expand at all? What possibly are they can't do right now, given how much space they already have?
Well, I'm looking forward to more detail from the museum, but they've said they want to reach more diverse audiences.
Okay.
They're increasingly seeing visitors from international places, and I think they probably want to make something more interactive, something that can be more fun. Going into the museum right now is still a very austere experience, so I could see more interactive, a more relaxed environment.
Now, speaking of big developments, those ambitious plans to build a concrete lid over several blocks of I-670 highway downtown so it can be turned into a destination park are now being quietly walked back. City Councilman Eric Bunch, who represents that area, says people are probably going to be upset with me, but there's absolutely no way we're going to get the lid done in time for the World Cup. That was the original timeline. With everything else the city is dealing with, has this project slipped down the priority list, Eric?
Yeah, I always thought it was further down the bottom of the list, and especially with the World Cup and meeting the deadline, and it makes you just question whether Kansas City is really ready for a World Cup. What are we, like 17, 18 months away from it? But I always thought it was not that important. People in the Power and Light District that want to walk their dogs have no green space to walk them, so I could understand their point, but I just never thought it was a priority.
Scott Parks, you are our official soccer and World Cup correspondent on this program on a regular basis. I mean, do you have the same worries about our planning for the World Cup at this point?
No, and Eric hurts my heart
Okay.
when he says this. I happen to know Kathy Nelson very well and think she should be the Kansas City Person of the Year if she is not.
All right.
But I have full confidence in the Sports Commission to pull this off. I think that the fact that Kansas City is getting the World Cup, and they have shown that they can handle these major events like the NFL draft, parades, the All-Star game for Major League Baseball, I have no doubt Kansas City is ready, and I cannot wait until 2026.
Can I get a rebuttal?
Of course you get a rebuttal, Eric.
30 seconds.
So people that are coming from other countries, what is the entertainment going to be? They're going to be in front of the Liberty Memorial throwing sling bags into a hole. These are people.
I actually would be willing to travel all the way from the UK to come to Kansas City to do that.
But I just don't think that they're prepared. We're, 17 months away from it? What are people going to do? That's my only concern.
Okay, but you don't need a second rebuttal to that.
I'm not as down on Kansas City as Mr. Wilson.
That is fair enough. Okay, the proof will be in the pudding. Be careful, by the way, what you say. You never know who's going to be recording you. Is that the lesson we learned this week after a KU professor is placed on leave after telling students men who refuse to vote for Kamala Harris because she's a woman should be lined up and shot.
It's what frustrates me. There are going to be some males in our society that will refuse to vote for a potential female president because they don't think females are smart enough to be president. We could line all those guys up and shoot them. They clearly don't understand the way the world works.
Alrighty, Lisa, did social media just hand this professor a career death sentence, or is KU just putting him on leave right now so they can wait for it to blow over and then bring him back again?
I think it's possible. The fact that all the attention that this has gotten, and while I believe, and I think we can see from the video that the comment was made in jest, I also think that it was extremely irresponsible and in poor taste, especially in a reality right now where political violence is very real, and a college professor with a bunch of students there should know better. So while I don't believe that he actually has any intent to commit political violence, I think it was possibly a fatal error.
I did see one of our viewers, Ed, who writes, it sounds like he was saying it in jest, but he should have been more aware of the times we're in, Scott. The fine art of hyperbole has been lost. Is there a teachable moment here?
I think if you want to argue that it was hyperbolic, you wouldn't get necessarily a disagreement from me. I would a quick disagreement, though. I don't know that it sounded as if it was in jest. It may have been. But according to the great Kansas City philosopher Johnny Dare, who once told me, leave the comedy to the professionals. He's not funny. It wasn't funny, especially in these tumultuous political times that we live in, and he should have known better.
Did he play into the hands of Kansas lawmakers who are already upset about what they view as a liberal bent of state university professors?
I'm sure it is crazy making for the administration at the University of Kansas when that sort of thing happens. These are times where universities need every dollar they can get, and that doesn't help.
Now then, did crime take a holiday this week because the Royals were in the playoffs and the Chiefs are undefeated? Tell that to folks in Brookside who hit again with more car thefts, business break-ins and home burglaries. Frustrated Brookside residents are now begging for the National Guard to be sent out to help supplement the understaffed Kansas City Police Department.
We're finding that the police officers are telling us they're short-staffed.
Thursday morning, Gambino put out a message in a Brookside neighborhood Facebook group to the Board of Police Commissioners saying if the police department's down so many officers, why shouldn't the Missouri National Guard be called in?
To answer the calls, to work in the stations so more police officers won't have so much overtime where they're fatigued and will be able to put more police cars out in the community.
It's Governor Mike Parson who controls the Missouri National Guard. He sent hundreds of them to the border. Any evidence he's willing to send them to Brookside, Lisa?
No. And while I understand that people in Brookside and all over the city are deeply concerned about the crime that is happening in their backyards, that is not necessarily the role of the National Guard. I don't think the governor has any plans to do it. I don't think KCPD has any interest in the National Guard coming to help them out.
As long as the crime was on the other side of truth, you never heard them saying we need the National Guard. Now that it's in their neighborhoods, oh my goodness, we need the National Guard to come in.
Eric is absolutely right. When it was east of Troost, where was everybody saying, bring in the National Guard now? We need the National Guard here. Once it moved into Brookside, a hoity-toity kind of neighborhood that I enjoy, now everybody wants the National Guard.
I think we need to be very clear about this story. The massive majority of citizens in Brookside are not calling for this. This was a post on a Facebook neighborhood group that got a TV story made about it. I do not think this is being seriously considered, and it's good for us to talk about philosophically, but let's not get too riled up.
I'm ripping up that story. I'm moving on, Brian, because of that. Okay, we've dodged a nationwide dock workers strike, but another strike of sorts has hit Kansas City, a rent strike. Appalled by conditions in their apartment buildings, residents in two lower-income tower blocks are now refusing to pay any rent, saying enough is enough in living with roaches, broken elevators, and air conditioning, and sometimes a lack of running water.
I will not be paying 1 cent to these slumlords because of the deplorable conditions I live in.
Danny tells us a little over a year ago, she was getting ready to take a shower when the ceiling collapsed into the bathtub, just missing her head.
I had to remove the trash and the drywall myself, and then the hole sat there unfixed for a couple months.
Now, we are talking about tens of thousands of dollars in rent being withheld. Are you allowed to just not pay? Are we about to see hundreds of people mass evicted onto the street, Lisa?
There are no state or federal protections for renters who refuse to pay rent. So this is a massive risk that they are taking, and certainly they could all be evicted. On the other hand, while landlords do enjoy a lot more rights, are more protected than renters, it is not free to evict a tenant. It takes time, it takes money, it takes resources. So I don't know that we would see it happen all at once, but there is, I mean, the conditions at these apartments have gotten to the point where these renters, despite this massive risk and the massive consequences of having an eviction on your record, feel that they have no other option.
And if they did do that, it would be a terrible optic, because those people do have extremely legitimate concerns. Their air conditioners, the elevators, the roaches, the mice. I think that would be a terrible optic if those landlords started evicting those people.
Okay, let's see if this next story that Brian thinks is worthwhile or not. And he'll be the judge. What's in a name? A lot, apparently, plans to rebrand the Lee's Summit Municipal Airport as the Greater Kansas City Regional Airport is causing turbulence with Kansas City Mayor Quinton Lucas. In fact, it's igniting a war of words between the two cities and threats of legal action. Lucas says it's going to lead to mass traveler confusion. What does he think is going to happen? There's no commercial flights out of there. Does he think people are going to be trying to get on a Delta Airlines flight from Lee's Summit and they're going to be confused where they are?
I'm not clear on the concern, although I suppose if you Googled if you put into Google Maps Kansas City Airport and you end up driving to Lee's Summit by accident, that would be a very frustrating day. I think the question is a broader one of sort of identity and community pride, and this idea that we've worked really hard to be Kansas City. Do we want suburban communities to identify as part of that community?
Well, what happened to this whole notion that we are all one Kansas City?
I thought we were.
Okay.
And to Brian's point, if you put in Kansas City Airport and your GPS takes you out to Lee's Summit and you think that's where you need to go, you either just move to town or you don't pay attention.
Now, and they say they're getting thousands and thousands of flights. They're getting top celebrities, big business leaders all coming in from Lee's Summit, bypassing Kansas City. So it's becoming a big destination. It's not, they say, a Mickey Mouse operation.
No, they have seen increased traffic there. I think that part of putting Kansas City on the name is to have a broader appeal here. But ultimately, the FAA will decide what is fair and what is not. So this really is just an exchange of words right now, maybe a battle over identity, but there is a federal regulator that's going to decide.
I just wanted to prove on this program that there was more than the Chiefs and the Royals happening in Kansas City this week. I think we did it. By the way, when we put a program like this together every week, you can't get to every story grabbing the headlines. What was the big local story we missed?
The police chief who made national news for raiding a Kansas newspaper makes his first court appearance. Gideon Cody is facing up to 23 months in prison. The Andrew Lester trial postponed, pushed off until next year. Lester is the 85-year-old homeowner who made national headlines after shooting a black teenager in the head in a Kansas City Northland neighborhood. His attorneys say he is showing signs of mental decline and is not fit to stand trial. Could a strike be on the way at Kansas City's largest amusement park? Maintenance workers at Worlds of Fun say the attraction is so understaffed, it's threatening visitors' safety. Currently, it's only open on weekends as part of its annual Halloween Haunt event. A rally in Wyandotte County demanding that election materials be available in Spanish. 1 in 3 of the county's residents are Latino. Kansas City played host this week to the largest gathering of Hispanic business leaders in America as the U.S. Hispanic Chamber Convention got underway at Bartle Hall. And channel your Bob Ross. You could win $10,000 for putting your artist skills to the test, drawing Kansas City's official World Cup poster. In addition to the cash, your creation will be featured all around the city when the global soccer tournament gets underway in 2026. Go to Kansas City's World Cup page to enter. The deadline is October 26th.
Assuming you've already got your crayons out ready to enter that competition, but was that your biggest story missed, or was there something different?
No, we covered a really big story with the rent strike.
Yeah.
I think that is a huge, and that might have other apartment complexes creating unions within their apartment complex, because senior housing is very serious in Kansas City. I get a lot of phone calls. I write a lot of articles about how senior housing is so terrible in Kansas City.
Brian.
Sandra Hemme was back in court this week. This is the St. Joseph woman who was convicted 43 years ago of murder but was exonerated by a court. It seems that almost everyone agrees she didn't do it, the prosecutors, the police themselves, and yet the Attorney General's office in Missouri opposed her release from prison. It had to be appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court with a threat to hold the Attorney General in contempt if she wasn't released from prison. Now the Attorney General continues to fight the wrongful conviction as it works its way through the appeals process. This week at the Court of Appeals, we'll have to wait and see whether it is from there appealed to the state Supreme Court.
Lisa.
I've got a different one. Not enough politics in this show. The Emerson, in conjunction with the Midwest Newsroom, which is based at KCUR, released a poll this week on a bunch of issues. One in particular, local control of Kansas City Police, which found that Missouri residents are pretty split, with 35 opposed to Kansas City having local control, 34% in support of it, and a bunch of people undecided. So truly an issue that's not resolved. And if city leaders had any desire to push a statewide referendum, I'm not sure the votes are there yet.
Scott.
I'm going to stay with the sports theme this week, Nick, if I could. The Chiefs and the Royals are having incredible success, but quietly, Kansas City Current is having an incredible season. They are currently ranked 4th in the NWSL, 1 point out of second place, and doing an incredible job this season.
And on that, we will say, our week has been reviewed courtesy of KCUR's Lisa Rodriguez and Eric Wesson from Next Page KC. You can hear Scott Parks 2 to 6 weekdays on 98.1 FM KMBZ. And you can hear Brian Ellison whenever important political news is happening on 89.3 KCUR. And I'm Nick Haynes. Next week, we move into election mode. We debate the upcoming $15 minimum wage amendment on the upcoming ballot in Missouri with the measure's supporters and opponents. Plus, we lift up the hood on all the issues you'll be deciding, from abortion to sports betting, new casinos to children and senior taxes. Until then, I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us here at Kansas City PBS, be well, keep calm, and carry on.